All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to POWTS Chat for November 2024. Thank you all for attending, and we're going to get started here today. So the presentation today is going to be broken up into two different parts. The first part of the presentation will be from Trevor Wells of Infiltrator, and he's going to talk to us about some of the products and changes that have either come forward or will be coming forward from Infiltrator recently or in the not too distant future. And then the second portion of POWTS Chat today is going to be from DSPS. So Matt Jansen will be speaking on some topics that have come up recently or that are pertinent for the winter and the upcoming season here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then I'm going to hand it over to Trevor.
All right, everybody can see it?
Yep.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Trevor Wells with Infiltrator Water Technologies. Just wanted to go over a few things this morning, probably not too long, but just to give you some updates on products that are out and a couple of slight component changes on things, and just a quick overview on some tanks of some things that have been asked throughout the year and just want to clarify with everyone. So with that being said, hopefully I can advance this. There we go. Aerofin is our newest product that is out in the market. It's another combined treatment and dispersal type of product. This approval just came through about a month and a half ago, and Wisconsin is the 8th state for it to receive approval for it in the US here. So I'll go a little bit into it. We do have quite a bit of work to get this product launched and out in the field, just from our end of creating crew files and things like that and distribution, but we will get there. So what is Aerofin? Aerofin is an 8-foot long cuspated plastic conduit that has a geonet and then wrapped in a geotextile. It's 2¼ inches wide by 12 3/4 inches tall. It's going to be connected to a manifold, which the manifolds do snap together, allows for parallel serial distribution and venting, does not require a D-box. You can see this picture here with the manifolds. If you flip the one on the left straight up, it would snap into the manifold on the right. And you can drill out those top orifices, those top holes for bringing your inlet pipe into the system. And then for any unused portions of the manifold, we run end caps on there. Same with the conduits as well. At the end of the runs, we'll run those end caps on there so effluent isn't just pouring out. A little bit better overview here of what this is going to be is we're going to have our effluent coming in, and these are going to be spaced 6 inches apart from each other, and it's going to have C33 mound sand in between these and to the top of them. As I mentioned, as the effluent comes in, with the way that these manifolds are built, it allows the effluent to pass through evenly, so you get more of an even distribution on there. So here's one thing that I want to point out, and underneath the conduits, we're going to be 6 inches in ground only, and that should actually say 30 inches to the restrictive layer, so I apologize on that. But it'd be 6 inches of mound sand underneath the conduits and for your basal area, and then 30 inches to the restrictive layer in an in-ground application. In a mound application, it's going to be 12 inches of sand and 24 inches to your restrictive layer. So that was all that I had on Aerofin. If we can, we'll go through the AES and tanks, and then I can answer questions after that if that works for everyone. So the AES, Advanced Enviroseptic, not a whole lot has changed with that. The big change on there is, again, in an in-ground application, 6 inches of sand underneath the AES conduits and 6-inch thick basal area as well. Mound remains the same at 12 inches underneath the conduits and 24 inches to your limiting layer underneath the mound sand. The other change is venting is now optional on AES. Before, where we used to have a high and a low vent, now the venting is optional on there. So, and this slide here, I just want to bring up, whether it's our products, competitors' products, or even rock, just to watch the sand of what is out there. You know, a lot of our specs are the ASTM C33, which is 3 to 4% passing in a 200 sieve. We want to make sure that we're using the correct sand on there. Just again, whether it's our product or somebody else's, any product, because that can have a big impact on performance of a system on there. For anyone on a county or state level that is interested, we do sell a sand spec checker that can be ordered right online. So if you have an area that you have questions, you know, even reach out to me. I have one myself as well that we can check to see if it meets spec on things. Tanks, this one's pretty quick and pretty simple on there. We had the addition of our IM 300 and our IM 1250 this year. All of our tanks are approved for septic, pump, and then holding when they're combined to meet the 2,000 gallon capacity. The big question that has come up that I get each year is our 2-compartment tanks. Our 2-compartment tanks are septic only. I have had people trying to run them as septic pump, and I've had to correct that. So just if you're seeing our tanks come through as 2-compartment and there's a lift station, they got to add another tank or use a different tank on there. So our tanks are septic only on our 2-compartment tanks. Again, for our tanks, a lot of uses. Just watch the soils that you're going into. Less than 70% clay, we can go to 4 foot. More than 70%, we got to stay 2 foot of cover over the top of the tanks. The other big piece that comes up, and anyone that wants this information, I can certainly email it to them, is installation instructions, but more so on the installation instructions is page 3 of it. You can see in the upper left, or I'm sorry, upper right, it's the gallons per inch on our tanks on there. That is the biggest question that I get about our tanks is what is our gallons per inch? That piece of paper has our gallons per inch for all of our tanks on one sheet, which makes it handy. For those of you using a CM 1060 in a 4-bedroom application for a pump tank, my recommendation is to run your calculations from the top down versus the bottom up. It helps keep some effluent inside that tank, just for a little bit more buoyancy and just added strength in that tank of not having the effluent so low in that tank. Otherwise, it sits pretty hollow on there. Then the last piece that I have is just Safety Star. I know it's been being talked about more and more. It was brought up pretty heavily at NAURA of safety and regarding all tanks. And again, whether you're using ours, concrete tanks, please lock them, make sure all the screws are on. Again, this is just an added piece. Other competitors of ours make safety products as well. Polylock, Tough Tight, they both make safety rings. Somebody's life is definitely worth the added safety. And if we can, as an industry, explain it to homeowners, I think it can go a long ways as well. Other than that, I know it was pretty quick. That is what I have for updates. So I will stop sharing, and if there's any questions, I can take those.
Thank you, Trevor. If folks want to unmute themselves and ask questions verbally, that would be okay. Otherwise, if you want to enter them in the chat, I can read them out loud. I do have a question for you, Trevor. So you mentioned that the page from the instruction guide with the gallons per inch, is there a digital version of that at all for installers, or is it all done manually calculated by hand?
I'm not sure what you're asking there.
Like an Excel spreadsheet that would calculate it for them instead of,
No, that we do not have at this
okay,
point.
thank you.
Hey, Trevor, Travis Wagner here.
Hey, Travis.
Hey, with that Aerofin, I believe in the past, as an infiltrator, like say some folks were having some questions on the installation process and they're out in the field. Was there any chance that you guys come out and assist with something like that?
Yes,
Not trying to put you
so-
on the spot, Trevor, but I think you guys have worked with people and products in the past on their first install.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we want to do. One, getting feedback from contractors of how they truly feel the install goes, means more. I learn more that way, right? And every time you do a job, you learn different tricks and tips to make things easier. So the quick answer to that, Travis, is yes. I would be out there on installs.
Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate that.
I do have to make a correction that I was just pointed out. Our arrow fin is 12 inches of sand underneath, whether it's in ground or in a mound. I thought we had gone the different route, but so it's 12 inches at this point.
Thank you, Trevor.
Yep.
So there was a question in the chat about where to find the gallons per inch chart online. Trevor, would it be okay with you if I included that installation guide in my follow-up email so that everyone who's attending here gets a copy of that?
You bet. I can shoot that over to you. Yeah, I will shoot that
Awesome.
over to you.
Thank you.
Hey, Trevor, I got one more. Travis Wagner here.
Yes, sir.
The like the addition of the 1200 50-gallon septic tank. I know in the past people, like you said, were trying to use it as a septic tank pump chamber.
Mhm.
There still isn't a solid enough wall in the middle, right? That only acts as a septic. And I think I just want that to be reiterated because I know I've come across that in the field, and I think there may or may not be some systems out there that were assumed. So if you were to pump down the second tank, it would drain the first tank because that's kind of like a wall that's folded in there. Is that still correct on how that works?
That's correct. And years ago, it used to be allowed with like a Simtech and a Renko filter basket on there. But just because, like you had just mentioned, when that pump kicks on, even inside that filter basket, it does draw down across that whole tank because our wall is not sealed on there. So that's why it's been changed for probably 8 to 10 years now, maybe I would say, that our two compartments are septic. But again, it's amazing how many times I get asked that, or I see people trying to draw plans up, trying to do it that way. So trying to make it easier for the regulators of catching it ahead of time, but just also, like I said, just want to reiterate it so we're all on the same page in there.
Hey, Trevor, this is Matt. Since we're on the subject of tanks, could you explain the difference between your CM and IM tank for everybody?
Yep. So the CM and the IM tank basically is just a molding process. The IM is an injected molded tank, where the CM is a compression molded tank on there. The CM version was, it's a quicker process, which from a manufacturing aspect, luckily we were in a position that our 1060, we wouldn't be able to keep up with the IM version. So we went to the compression molding. I've had very good feedback on the compression molding 1060. With the redesign of the tank, it's added a extra corrugation, deeper corrugations. And when you look at that tank from the side, the ends don't round from top to bottom. They round left to right so that it has more ground contact on the ends of the tank. So one thing to point out with that is, even though our 1250 is an IM version, we use that same design of rounding off the ends of that 1250 from left to right versus top to bottom. Some of the 1250s that have gone in so far this year, the feedback that I've gotten is people have liked them. It makes for, I'm going to say, more forgiving install.
This is Finger here.
Yes.
You were saying on the passive treatment system, the new passive treatment system. So it is 12 inches, just like other passive treatment systems, 12 inches of sand, whether it's below the component just like other systems. So it's 12 inches if it's in ground and 12 inches if it's a mount.
Yep, 12 inches underneath the actual product
Right.
of C33 sand, and then 24 inches to your limiting layer from under the sand, yes.
Gotcha.
All right, thank you so much, Trevor. If folks have additional questions, they can either send them to me or send them to Trevor. That is fine either way. So unless anyone has something more, we'll pass it off here to Matt. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yep, thank you.
All right. Okay, so we've got a few things to cover for the DSPS section of the POWTS chat. Some of the things that come up over the last month or so, and other topics that we think is worthwhile to share. So first one I wanted to talk about is viewing soil color. It's that time of year, where it's SPS says, color evaluation shall be performed on days where light conditions permit accurate color determinations. So in versions past of the code many years ago, we used to actually have certain dates that you could only do soil testing in the winter between 10 and 2, and the sun had to be high in the sky, but it couldn't be a bright day because you didn't want snow blindness. We had a bunch of conditions in there. So the way the code currently reads, it just says we have to be performed on days where light conditions permit accurate color. So it leaves it up to the soil tester to do that. So you have to take some responsibility to make sure that you have accurate light conditions to do that. But remember, as the winter season or fall goes on, as we approach the winter solstice, light conditions get lighter and lighter, and or less light conditions. And then also the sun stays lower on the horizon, and the lower horizon sun is going to transmit more of the redder kind of hues, and it's going to make it really hard to see red redox in soil when you've got more light that's in the red color spectrum. So in this case here, you should be able to see it, even though it's hard to see. Above that horizontal root, sort of in the middle there, you can see some redox scattered up above there. There's some gray spots below it, and some more redox further down, a little out of focus there. But you can see some spots in the soil where there's redox showing up. This was done probably about a month ago, middle of the day. It was, it looked a lot better in person, or a lot worse, I guess you could say. The redox were more visible in person than they are here in the photo. But then again, as light conditions change, if I was going to do the soil test at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I probably wouldn't be able to see these kind of colors. And we've had instances where that has happened. I just had one recently where I was out on the site. I looked at it, and it was last year's November soil test. This year, the county went out there. It was an A+0. The county said, "Are you sure you want to approve this site? We have clear redox right to the surface." And I'm like, "No way." I was out there, I looked at it, everything was good. We went to the site, and sure enough, it was all over, very apparent. And it's, I couldn't believe how was this missed. And all I can figure is that the light conditions were worse than I thought, and they were hard to describe. Because they weren't evident. So just something to be aware of when you're soil testing. You may want to put off some of these very sensitive sites and come back and evaluate them at another time when you have better light conditions. Next subject is plat restrictions. So this isn't something that comes up too much anymore. When the code went through the major revision from prescriptive base to performance base in 2000. Prior to that, we also had platting requirements. So if you were going to do a subdivision plat, as far as the sanitary went, you'd have to basically do a soil test on each lot and show what systems were available and which ones were not. And back then, we needed 24 inches of suitable soil to put a mound in. So you would have various lots in here. You can see in the sort of the middle one here, this one has an outlot 1. There's a corridor in here and an outlot. They were just it's an outlot. And it could be for many different reasons. It could be that there's a restriction for sanitary. It could be an outlot for, this might be a waterway or a utility easement or something. But you can see under the magnifying glass on the left, it says restriction. No buildings for human habitation shall be erected, and no soil absorption systems for septic tank effluent disposal shall be constructed on outlots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this one actually says what the outlot, limitation is, but why? What was the reason for it? Well, prior to 2000, it may not have had 24 inches of suitable soil. You can't do holding tank for new construction. Therefore, there's no way to develop that, so it became an outlot. So what happens nowadays if you go out to that lot and you say, hey, we don't need 24 inches of suitable soil, or the county even allows holding tanks as a new option or new construction, you could say, hey, this is a developable lot, but in order to do that, it has to be removed from outlot status and has to go through that process. So how do we do that? Well, plat restrictions, the department shall consider restriction or prohibition placed on the outlot prior to 2000, and they can remove that waiver. So there's a process to go through this. Our process under, so that's under 383. Our process is that we will do that restriction waiver for $100 per lot. So in order to do that, if you have an outlot where you want to remove the restriction, you can submit it in ISLA as a miscellaneous review. Although it's $85, the staff member that's going to review it will change that to $100. We'll add the $15 fee, make that $100, and then we will remove that restriction waiver for you. So what happens is we will generate a letter. So the department DSPS will generate a letter stating that lot restriction waiver is in place, and we'll grant that for any lot. It still may not be buildable, so you have to be careful with that. And there's another step, but I'll talk about in a minute, which you'll have to do, because the state allows holding tanks as a new construction. So we will remove any restrictions that we have for any kind of sanitary based outlot restriction. We'll issue the waiver. However, even though that may be removed from that waiver, and then I'll talk about going through DOA to get that removed, if the county still restricts holding tanks for new construction, it still may not be buildable if you can't get a soil-based system out there, but we'll still remove it from our end. So plat restrictions then have to go to the Department of Administration. So once we issue that letter, then you'll have to take that to DOA plat review. And so you'll take our letter to them, and then they'll have to remove that restriction off the plat. So you'll have to ask them the language here is ask them to incorporate the release into a correction instrument under section or statute 236.295. And we'll put that in our letter that we send out, so you'll have that information in there. You don't have to remember it here. But our letter, then you'll have to take on to DOA plat review and then have them remove that off the plat. So once that's done, then it's no longer considered an outlot. It's removed. You may have to go through they may ask for others. So this just removes the DSPS one. So if it's specific to us, plat may be fine with that. If it's just an outlot and they don't list a reason, you may have to contact other entities. There may be other departments that may have a restriction for certain things, and I'm not sure. You'll have to talk to plat review on that, but DNR may have a restriction, or somebody else may have a restriction and reason why that's placed as an outlot. So anyway, that's how to go through that process. It doesn't happen often. Back in 2000, when this first changed for the first couple of years in early 2000s, we were doing hundreds of these a year. A lot of them were being processed. Haven't had one in quite a while. I think it was Katie had one of these pop up, and we're sort of like, what's this? And I'm like, this is the process. So they're out there. We can do it. I just want everybody to be familiar with how that process works. Want to mention force main setbacks. That this is off our table 383 .43-1 lists all of our horizontal setback parameters. This came up recently with somebody directional boring a force main across a property line. And just as a reminder that force mains, suction lines, pump discharge lanes, lines, everything, those have a 2-foot setback from a property line. So just be aware that there is a setback for those. Question is rejuvenation or pretreatment. So can a pretreatment unit be added to an existing system, and is it considered rejuvenation or is it pretreatment? Well, the answer is it depends. Both could be possible. So the product has to be approved for whatever use it's going to do. So a rejuvenation, that would be an addition without receiving any downsizing or vertical separation credit. So the system must already meet separation distances. So if I just have a system, the soil test or a new boring shows that it meets its separation distance, and the system just has, for instance, a biomat that's in there, and it's just not doing the best right now. It's sort of ponded, and we want to put pretreatment out there to rejuvenate that system. We can do that, and that's going to get, hopefully that biomat will be dissolved or lessened so that we get better infiltration. But we're not asking for any separation credits for that. Now, if we're adding it because we need pretreatment, for instance, let's say we have an older system and they want to modify load or flow. And as part of that investigation, we did a pit or a boring, and we found out we don't meet our separation distance. So in order to continue using that drain field or that cell, we need to get downsizing credit. Then it's pretreatment. So in addition and receiving downsizing vertical separation credit, then it's a pretreatment device. So it sort of depends on how they're used. In order to do pretreatment, those credits, we have to use pressure distribution to get that. So if you have a system that's not pressurized already, you would have to find a way to convert that. So getting those credits aren't just as easy as putting the unit out there. We would also have to do pressure distribution in order to get that downsizing or vertical separation credit. We've had some questions here about our sort of our partner here of General Plumbing. We get some questions about that. Where does POWTS start and General Plumbing end, or vice versa? And then also some of the things that we get questions, especially on larger projects, about what is needed to be reviewed under General Plumbing. And so this is under 382. It says submittals to the department or agent municipality. This is for General Plumbing. So this would be department under General Plumbing, or agent municipalities, which would be those municipalities like cities and villages and towns that may have their own agent status for General Plumbing. So anything involving 16 or more plumbing fixtures, that has to go to General Plumbing. A grease interceptor installed for public buildings has to go to General Plumbing. However, if you're doing a grease interceptor as part of a POWTS plan, you can do it as part of the POWTS plan, and we will do it as part of our POWTS review. We'll also do the grease interceptor that way, but the grease interceptor as a standalone, or grease interceptor as an individual item before it ties in, there may be some, we have a bunch of slides on that. We may be able to do it. It may have to go to General Plumbing, especially if it's just a standalone. It's not connected into a POWTS. It just goes a different direction, like into a public sewer or something. Sanitary dump stations, those are General Plumbing reviews. And so there's other ones in here, but typically we don't get involved with them with POWTS. Drain systems to be installed for manufactured home communities and campgrounds. So if you have a collection network for a campground or mobile home park, not only all the drains, but we've had instances where they may put a tank in that looks just like a septic tank, but it's being used as basically a collection, and then a lot of times they'll put like a pump in there, a pump chamber, and it's actually a lift station to move it over to another tank or move it into the septic tank eventually. So all that before the septic tank is general plumbing. So any kind of drain or collection network, lift stations, that's all general plumbing. And then also piping designed to serve as a private interceptor main sewer greater than 4 inches in diameter when sized for gravity flow. That you'll need a separate general plumbing plan review on. So we can do the 4-inch private interceptors as part of our POWTS review, but anything bigger than that, that has to then go back to general plumbing. So just want to be aware of some of the other things on here that may have to go to general plumbing that's outside the purview of what POWTS does. And general plumbing contacts, I know it's sort of hard to read the fine print down there, but just be aware that you can go to the POWTS, sorry, not POWTS, the DSPS website, and instead of POWTS, go to general plumbing, and you can get all the current contacts on there. They do have a couple spots that are vacant. I did see that they just hired somebody. I don't know if this has been, I don't think this has been updated on here yet, but they do have a couple vacant areas, and they're looking to hire some more general plumbing contacts. So that would be the field people / reviewers. So just be aware, any questions about general plumbing, contact them. Want to mention access openings, something that has come up from time to time here, and I think bears going over again, that under 384.25 parents 7 deals with access openings on tanks. So minimum size access opening and location, we came up with these numbers, based on the manufacturers and the servicers and the plumbers, and we want to make sure that we're getting access to those tanks when we need to, but we're also able to get to what we need to, where we can access a pump, access a filter, do what we need to do. So the minimum manhole opening is 23 inches in diameter. So that's what the manufacturers have to comply with. So we can have access to, again, get to our pumps, get to our filters, things like that, or access into the tank with a person if need be. Manholes are required in anaerobic tanks over the inlet of the most upstream compartment. Also, each compartment, so if you have a multi-compartment tank, you have to have a manhole in each compartment to access. Also, a treatment device we have to have access over. So if you got like an ATU or something like that, we need to have a manhole over that. And any kind of pump, we need to have a manhole over that. Treatment device would also be a filter. So we have to have an access to that. So here in our access openings, again, manholes are required in anaerobic tanks over, and it lists them, the ones we just went through: inlet, each compartment, treatment device, pump, or a siphon. So here you can see, sort of left to right. So left would be our most upstream inlet. We have a tank with a manhole above it. We have an inspection, that blue and sort of inspection port over an outlet baffle or outlet T. Then over the next compartment, we have to have an access for each compartment. So we have an access there. Also, it has to come, we'll talk about that, where they have to go above grade or below grade. But we have access over our filter, which is the yellow, and then we have another access opening in another compartment over top of our pump. Also, manholes are required in holding components, so not a treatment or anaerobic tank, but so this would be holding dose or settling basin. They have to be at least 4 inches above finished grade and at least 23 inches. So they do also have to have access also to get into them for servicing. So to continue on that line, the maximum depth of a manhole opening bury is 6 inches. So we can't bury, if we do bury a tank opening, we can't be deeper than 6 inches. We don't want to be digging 2-3 feet to try to find where the top of that tank access is. Has to be within 6 inches of grade. If we do have one that comes above grade, the manhole opening, so not the top of the cover or the lid, but the top of the manhole opening has to be 4 inches when over a treatment device or a pump. So I know we see a lot of these, you know, in inspections down the road or maintenance events. I just had one where I was looking at it. They had to sort of dig the cover out of the turf. You know, that opening's supposed to be 4 inches above, so we don't have infiltration of water or dirt into it. So this sort of gives you sort of an illustration of where we have to be. No more than 6 inches deep. That's to the opening, not to the top of the tank. And finished grade has to be at least 4 inches above if you're above. So these are what some of them look like. So we're going to go through these fairly quick, but a single compartment holding tank, we just need one. It should be over the inlet because that's where the majority of the solids are going to be. And minimum 23-inch access opening has to be above grade. It has to be at least 4 inches above grade. 2 compartment holding tank. Again, we have to have one for each compartment. So we have 2 manholes, 2 compartments, 2 manholes, and at least 4 inches above grade. Those, because it's a holding tank, they have to be above grade. So both of them have to come up to the top. A single compartment septic tank. The first one can be buried. We don't have to be above grade on that because there's nothing to access. But on the second one, because we also have to have a manhole above the most upstream inlet, which we do, and we have to have a manhole access opening above a treatment device, a filter. So we'd have to have 2 manholes, but only the second one has to be above grade to access that effluent filter. 2 compartment septic tank. Again, we have to have 2 manholes, not much different than before. You know, we can go through again, bury the first one. Second one has to come above because we have an outlet filter. Should be an inspection pipe there. Doesn't have to be a 23-inch, but above that second baffle for inspection. A dose tank. Here we'd only need to have 1 manhole above the pump, because it's not the most upstream inlet. Because it's a dose tank, we have a septic tank ahead of it. That's going to be the most upstream inlet. So we would not need to have a manhole over the inlet here. We could do an inspection if we wanted to, but the manhole opening has to be above the pump and it has to be above grade for access. Septic tank dose tank combination. Well, we have 2 compartments, so we're going to need at least 2 manholes. But we have to have 1 over the most upstream inlet. We have to have 1 over the outlet filter because we have to have access for that. And we have to have 1 above the pump because we need access to that. So the most upstream inlet can be buried. The 1 above the filter and a pump, those have to extend above grade for us. Here's a 3 compartment tank, 2 septic and dose tank. Again, most upstream inlet. Each compartment, so we're going to need at least 3 of them. The ones in the second and third compartment, because they're above an effluent filter, above a pump, those then again have to be above grade. So, sort of breaks down all the tanks for us. I wanted to mention Pearson View. As of May 30th, the department has a joint venture with Pearson View to do exams for us. So Pearson View is an independent company and they just do testing. And they do testing for more than a department. They do testing for a lot of other different things. And so they have Pearson View testing locations throughout the state. So instead of waiting for the few locations that the department does for our testing, which we'll still continue to do, you may be able to sign up for a test for Pearson View at one of their test centers. So the nice thing about Pearson View is that they have a lot more locations to go to, probably going to be one much closer to you than the few that the department does. But they are also computer-based exams. And so you'll see you'll have a lot more opportunities. Basically, when you want to sign up, you can go do it. Just go to their testing center and take the exam. You don't have to wait till, whatever the time slot is that the department has or location. You can go directly to them and do that. Also, you receive the results pretty quick and you can reschedule again. If you don't pass and you want to reschedule, you can do that sooner. The Pearson View is an additional cost, so they are a higher cost than taking them through the department, but it gives you the opportunity again to take the exams at a closer location and at a quicker pace if needed. So these are other locations. The ones with the little P on them, those are actually Pearson VUE testing locations that they own. There are 6 of them across the state. From what I understand, they're identical offices. They look exactly the same, and they even said the artwork on the wall even looks the same. So they're very how do I say, regimented in what they do, very professional in their test taking. A lot of the other ones by sort of like the yellowish, orangish kind of bullet points there, or pins. Those are typically ones that are found in some UW schools, UW centers, and also tech schools that will have testing locations there. So some of the tests available in Pearson VUE are the plumbers group, so journeyman, master plumber, and POWTS inspector. So the ones for POWTS that are available on there. Available at Pearson VUE. The CST exam is not available on Pearson VUE due to the hands-on component, because there's the soil monolith to ask questions about and the hand texturing and colors that have to be done. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to have, whatever, 30 locations throughout the state that all have their own monolith and own soil samples. So those CSTs still have to take at a DSPS testing site. But if you want to take the POWTS inspector or one of the others, or there's a lot of other exams that are done if you're in other professions beside the trades, and other trades too, you can take those exams through Pearson VUE. So just want you to be aware what's out there for that. Just to mention here, just remember, we've seen this throughout the summer, some issues with staying off the toe of the mound. Remember, vehicular traffic, excavation, compaction are prohibited in the basal area and 15 feet downslope. So remember not to work the mounds from the downslope toe. Don't drive on them. Don't have equipment parked out there. So we've been seeing some of those issues. Want to mention large-scale systems. DSPS and DNR Memorandum of Understanding is still pending. As a reminder, large-scale systems require DNR input of over 12,000 gallons per day design. That's 8,000 gallons per day actual flow. So remember, we do all of our stuff off of a design flow. DNR rules and regs are off of actual flow, 8,000 gallons. So our rules, without talking about the MOU, because that's still pending out there, the DSPS rules are still unchanged. I mean, we process a system, whether it's 5,000 gallons, 10,000, or 15,000, our review process is exactly the same internally. The only thing that we have to do is once we're over that 12,000 gallon design or 8,000 actual flow, we have to involve the DNR. What the DNR requires or what their rules are, that's up to them. So if they may put other additional requirements on, that's above and beyond what the department does. So we still issue the permit according to our rules or what we do, the way we calculate things, the way we size things. The DNR may require additional. So they may say, hey, you need to do nitrogen removal, or we're going to require sampling, or whatever they want to add on. That's up to them to decide according to their rules and what they want to tack on. So we just look at our end, the DNR looks at their end, and if there's a requirement that they require, that's up to the DNR to enforce. We want to enforce, nitrate removal or sampling protocols or something if that's something that the DNR required. Since we're on the DNR subject, I want to mention DNR labs. If you do have to do testing or sampling, DNR does maintain a list of labs. Now, it's important to realize that they have 2 groups of labs. They have those that are certified. Those are for hire. That means that's an independent lab that will actually contract out, and there's several of them around the state, and they're for hire. So you can take a sample to them, pay them the fee, they will get you a result. There are also registered labs. Registered labs are for their own use. Those are typically things such as like wastewater treatment plants. So they are registered through the DNR to do their own compliance work. So if they have to meet their parameters for whatever BOD or nitrogen or phosphorus discharge to a body of water, their lab is registered that they can do their own samples and then provide them to the DNR for compliance. They are not for hire. So those labs typically are the DNR doesn't recognize them as being able to certify their work for an outside entity. If you want to take a look at what the DNR labs are that are out there that are certified, you can go to their website, dnr.wisconsin.gov, and it's got that list there. Also, I got the QR code that'll take you right to that. So, interested in labs, you can search the DNR website and get that list of what labs are certified, and it also breaks it down for what, whether they can do, of course, beyond our stuff, but if they're just BOD or FOG or heavy metals, most of the big commercial labs, they do everything. Want to mention the maintenance program. So local governmental units shall, at a minimum, and I've got the big ones in here, there's a couple others, little ones, but shall do an inventory, accept and record reports, and notify owners of maintenance that is due. So this is mostly for tank servicing events, may also be for other things listed in the management plan. So if there's something in a management plan that requires them to do something, such as like an ATU or something like that, the county or local governmental unit shall record those reports and make sure they're getting their maintenance. But the interesting thing about this is that although the majority of 383 is a uniform standard, we do give the counties, local governmental units, some latitude to do more for their maintenance program. So this is one that's at a minimum shall do. So if the counties want to do some extra things, they're allowed to do that. So where we're going with this is we've had some questions about, maintenance program, do we pump or inspect? SPS 383.54 says that, POWTS treatment shall be at least visually inspected at least once every 3 years. So there's another section that didn't include that in here. So prior to July 1st of 2000, they all have to do that. And after July 1st of 2000, when the big code revision was, all those systems as part of their management plan also require once every 3 years. So anyway, at least once every 3 years, have to inspect to see if there's any ponding out on the ground, if there's any sewage coming out there someplace. So that's one requirement. Also, further on in 383.54, governmental unit completed the inventory, which everybody has done, may by ordinance extend the visual inspection interval required up to 5 years for occasionally occupied structures or facilities. So if you have somebody that's, you've got your cabin up north and you're only up there a week or two out of the year, and you say, I want to extend it to 5 years, it's up to the county, but the county may, by ordinance, extend that to a 5-year time period for servicing for you. But what it really boils down to is that 383.543B says the servicing of an anaerobic treatment tank, so a septic tank, shall be when the combined sludge and scum equals 1/3 of the volume. So when they do that 3-year status check, is the tank more than 1/3 full or less than 1/3 full? If it's more than 1/3 full, it's like a speed limit. More than 1/3 full, it needs to be pumped. If it's less than 1/3 full, it does not need to be pumped. It can be pretty close to 1/3, but it's sort of, it's like a speed limit. If it's less than 1/3, then it passes. It does not need to be pumped at that time. So who can do this? Again, 383.54 says the inspection shall be performed by one of the following, and it's basically all the credentials. So master plumber, restricted, journeyman restricted, POWTS inspector, a septage servicing operator, a pumper can do it, or a registered POWTS maintainer. So it breaks it down that any one of those credentials can do that inspection to see if there's sewage ponding on the ground. That's just sort of a cursory look around, don't see any. And then the next one would be, does it need to be pumped or not? And that's what I have for November's POWTS chat.
Thank you, Matt. So if folks want to, if they have any questions, they can ask them in the chat and I'll read them out loud. Or if you have questions that you'd like to ask verbally, you can do that if you'd like. I'd like to give a minute or two here to see if any questions come in before you enter your credentials in the chat. It makes it very, very difficult for me to follow along if there are any questions.
Matt, this is Alex in Kenosha. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. You were talking about manhole risers and placement and placed above grade, minimum and maximum. I've got some installers who will install 3,000 gallon concrete holding tanks that will actually have a manhole over the inlet and the outlet. And on small lots, quite often what they want to do is they want to maximize the distance from the manholes to the buildings or air intakes, windows, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So they want to extend the manhole over the outlet end of the tank for servicing, and they want to bury the manhole riser that's over the inlet. So I totally understand why they want to do that. And they're always single compartment tanks, so I guess I haven't really made any issues about them burying the manhole riser. I have talked to them also about possibly extending the manhole riser over the inlet end to within 6 inches of the ground surface as a just-in-case sort of scenario. In the event somebody needs to access the inlet, but
Sure.
the argument has been, well, it's a single compartment tank. They certainly could utilize the outlet end and do whatever service they need to do on the inlet end.
Well,
Which is
there's a difference
legitimate.
right. There's a difference between meeting the minimum of the code and what's a good idea and bad idea. So obviously in a holding tank, the majority of the trash, majority of the solids are going to settle over the inlet and not over the outlet. But the code just requires a manhole someplace. And so if you have a very long tank, they're probably not going to be doing a very good job of cleaning out that tank by having the manhole towards the far end of the tank away from the inlet and trying to snake the hose back and clean that tank out. But it just requires one manhole in a holding component tank, and it has to be at least 4 inches above grade. If they want to do additional manholes out there, they can do additional manholes and they don't have to bring them up to within 6 inches because it's not a required one. So if they want to, if they have a super long big tank and there's one manhole and they want to put other ones out there and bury them deeper, they can do that. It's not the greatest because it's require a bunch of extra digging. You think you'd have them closer, or if you need servicing or have a manhole over that inlet, that would make the most sense because that's where you're going to have the most debris and most solids. But that's not what the requirement is. The requirement just says that they have to have one manhole at least 4 inches above grade and at least 23 inches in dimension.
Okay. The other, in part of also the discussion with them too, is being utilized as a holding tank. Quite often they're going to be pumped a lot more often. And, we've talked about the settling of the solids and stuff near the inlet end. And the discussion has been, well, if it's a holding tank, you probably aren't going to have too much of that accumulation anyway, because more of that's probably going to remain kind of floatable, so to speak. Just you don't have a lot of opportunity for a lot of settling to occur. So we've had lots of discussions regarding that particular issue too.
Sure.
But
Yep.
Anyway, okay, thanks.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording here. Thank you all for attending POWTS Chat for November 2024.